Welcome to How to Read Music, Part 1, The Staff. The music staff is made up of 5 lines, and since we have 5 lines, we also happen to have 4 spaces in between those lines. And a note can rest either on a line, which is when you have a line going right through it, or in a space, which is when it's between 2 lines and there isn't a line going through it. So, real quick, we're going to test your knowledge on this and see if you can tell me what are space notes and what's a line note. So, what would this note here be? If you said space note, you are correct. Notice that it's between 2 lines, but there's nothing going through the middle of it. How about this note? That's also a space note. Again, 2 lines on either side of it, but nothing going through the middle. How about this note? Line note. Notice there is a line going right through the center of the note. How about this note? Again, we have a line note. We have a line going right through the center. Now, we're going to trick you a little bit. What about this note here? Because notes can go on either side of the staff, too. If you said this was a space note, you're correct, because it doesn't have a line going through the center of it, does it? Good for you. Now, a note is made up of 2 parts. The part that I have been drawing, which is the head, and then a beam, which is this part. This beam can go in either direction, really. It can point down like that note, or up like that note, or down like this note. And what we decide that on is based off of this middle line. If a note is above the middle line up here, the stem's going to point down, and if it's below the middle line down here, like this note, the stem will point up. Now here's the really cool thing about the staff. It looks like it sounds. So if you have a note all the way down here, like we just showed you, it's going to sound lower than a note all the way up here. And it even looks lower. It's all the way at the bottom versus this one that is all the way up here. Note number 1 would sound like this, and note number 2 would sound like this. You can hear that that one's lower and that one's higher. And you can see it because we have to go from down here all the way up there to get to that second note. So let's do a quick game, and we'll see if you can tell me what direction the notes are going. So I have a note right here, and a note right here. Is note number 2 lower or higher than note number 1? If you said it's higher, good for you, you're correct. We go from note number 1 to note number 2. And you can see that it went up higher to get there. Let's keep the same note. What about going from here to here? Do we get lower or higher when we went to note number 2? If you said it got higher, you're correct. Now these are really close together. You can see that it just went up a little bit to get to that next spot. How about from here to here? When we went to note 2, do we get higher or lower? If you said we got lower, you are correct. See how the note goes from up high down low. So, a quick review. How many lines is a staff made up of? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. 5 lines and 4 spaces. When you're drawing a note or reading a note, you'll see the note head and the beam of the note. And if the note's up higher above the middle line, that beam is going to point in the opposite direction, just to make it easier for us to read. We learned how to determine whether notes get higher or lower just by looking at them. So these two notes, we happen to get higher. And we learned space versus line notes. These two notes happen to be space notes.